Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton, Sayfie here with Chris, Balas and Anthony Broome. It is Thursday, August 14th. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and we got a great deal going on right now at thewolverine.com. You can become a premium member for the next 2 months, well into the season, into October, for just $1. That's 50 cents over the next 2 months. You can use the promo code UM1. That is UM and the numeral 1. Gentlemen, we are Denard Robinson days until kickoff, 16 days until we're back in the big house. It is getting very, very, very real.
And we are 1 day away from the NCAA's decision on Michigan's fate, relating to Signgate with Connor Stallions. So a lot of rumblings that the hammer is not coming. We'll wait and see until it's official before we before we celebrate. But you hear things, right? And you would think that if it were something really, really bad, that it would have broken by now. So, but we'll know tomorrow. And got a text on Tuesday, actually a DM on Tuesday from somebody, like a secondhand source, that said, "Hey, it's just what most of your colleagues believed, that it was going to be, suspensions for Sherrone Moore. It was going to be a major fine, a hefty fine, and then show causes for Connor Stallions and Jim Harbaugh, which is not unexpected at all. So, but we'll wait and see until it's announced, and then we will have our columns on it from there, and then we will see what the aftermath is. It's amazing. A lot of people in the Michigan side feel like they've been wronged, and some of them absolutely have. And if the whistleblower's identity is revealed, will that make them feel better? Will it shine some more light on how this whole thing got started and who's behind it? I think it will. So we'll wait and see, but certainly not over yet.
Yeah, we've never made a definitive statement one way or another, but I'll make it right now. This is a pro mental health podcast, and between football being here 2 weeks from now and this finally being in the rearview mirror, whatever shape that takes, I think that's a load off of anyone who had a vested interest in it. Looking forward to that being in the rearview mirror. And again, it's going to be seemingly, barring some major plot twist here, less than 24 hours out, seems like it's going to be pretty much what we thought it would be. And that's going to make for a lot of interesting social media stuff that I have no interest in taking part in, but it will be interesting nonetheless.
What happens to the people whose lives have been consumed by this?
Like ours?
No, to a greater extent.
Yes, ours is on a professional level, right? You've got people whose really their self-worth depends on what happens from this ruling. I swear to God, that's the absolute.
No, that's what I'm
that's
getting.
The crazy part about this, it's like, people, go hug your kids and go out and have some fun in the summer, and not be sitting there hanging on the words of some clown who has no idea about anything, but it's just like, this is what should happen, so this is what's going to happen because I said so. It's absurd, but that's why Twitter and that's why social media is
there's been this, like, I hate to use like a superhero movie type thing, but there's been like this multiverse of people who just like, you just exist in this complete, you're either existing in a different reality, or you're making stuff up for engagement and attention, and that's 100%. I just think that's going to be a rough day for those people. And, I'm not going to sit here and do, you're not sitting here doing victory laps or anything like that. We don't even know what the ruling is going to be. Michigan is going to be punished. Like, there will be some sort of, hurt that comes along with it. But, it's been almost 2 years of earmuffs, kids, just 2 years of mostly horse shit. And it's, I'm glad that this is almost done with, because there's been nothing new to add on it, in at least over a year. And the discourse around it has been extremely toxic, but not all that surprising when you consider that it's Ohio State fans and a couple Michigan State fans. And the thing I find most funny is that Ohio State fans, whether you think it's legitimate or not, you won a national championship last year, but you spent most of this offseason celebrating something that isn't going to happen, which I find hilarious.
Yeah. That's sad, honestly. But that's who they are. It's a weird dynamic. I'm grateful that I'm not part of that. And it's just bizarre. And really the personal shots, that I couldn't care less. Some guy calls me boob salsa, I think is what somebody said, one of these bloggers or alleged insiders. And I'm like that's a negative. Two of my favorite things, So, and I don't know how you get boob salsa out of Chris Balas, but I'll tell you what, it is what it is. So, and sorry, apologies to our producer Megan behind the scenes there. So anyway, but it's weird, right? And when they even Michigan fans at the beginning, when we said, hey, this is what the NCAA is initially proposing and stuff like that, we're so bitter. And you had bloggers saying, this is what he said and go after him and burn his house down. My daughter was getting threats on Facebook. People are nuts. They were talking about my other family members. I'm like, dudes, go out and go out with your family, get some food or something like that, and just breathe a little bit. This is not life and death. Never will be. I liken it to something that Scotty Scheffler said about his golf game. Even, there are much bigger things in life than even, being the best golfer in the world. There are a billion more important things than, what we cover and what we do. This is supposed to be fun. For the majority of my career, it's been fun. This has been anything but fun. And the longer that this goes on, I've had people allege that things about me that were absolutely disgusting. And, and it happens such that it doesn't leave once it's out there and people accept it. And whether it's true or not, there are labels associated with it. This is not that important, folks. So when it's all said and done, whatever happens, go out and enjoy yourselves the rest of your summers. We've got football coming up in about 3 weeks here, 2.5 weeks.
For those that have the bingo card going at home, boob salsa has now been, you can scratch that one off. Yeah, and that one hit today. So any prop bets or anything like that. But so that's kind of the NCAA. As we mentioned, Friday is when that is expected to be announced, whatever the ruling is on the minor scouting allegations, Connor Stallions, all that. We also had Sherrone Moore this week speaking for the first time during fall camp. First time since he spoke in Las Vegas at Big Ten Media Day. A bunch of different topics that he hit on, and we will kind of run down them here. And I want to start with the team motto that they have really implemented and embraced, TNT, which is kind of ironic. Today, not tomorrow, but the NCAA ruling is tomorrow, not today. But, focusing on today, tomorrow's not promised, yesterday's gone. Control the controllables, a great message that Greg Harden used to, give to a bunch of different athletes and really help change their lives with that simple mindset shift. And TNT was come up with by Robbie Emery, Michigan's director of character development. I feel like you're a real diehard if you know who Robbie Emery is, but he's been with the program for a while, since 2016. Sherrone Moore seemed very pleased with the progress this team has made. Of course, I don't know that he's going to say anything different, but he seemed very happy with the way they scrimmaged on Saturday. He talked about becoming a physical team, a team with great discipline, great passion, great togetherness. He said, I love this team. And they're entering a really, actually started Wednesday, a really intense and physical 4-day stretch of camp, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then, maybe you kind of land the plane in the last week of camp before game week. But what are your guys' thoughts on TNT and Sherrone Moore's overall vibe on this team?
Everything that Sherrone Moore said publicly, and he's always going to put a positive light on things, right? As every coach does in the preseason. When we were at Big Ten Media Days, how many coaches went up there and said, man, we're really going to have a hard time this year. We're going to suck. Not even Purdue's coach said that. So what does that tell you? But at the same time, a lot of what he said about what he has seen has been confirmed by other people who've seen practice that we've spoken with. And they are very bullish on this team for a few reasons. Number one, they think the offensive line is going to be more physical, going to be better. And they've really spent a lot of time on that in the last several months. They were embarrassed at times last year, flat out. They've said it. They've said that. Giovanni Ohadi has said it. Greg Crippen has said how disappointed he was with his play. So, but I think there are pieces there, guys, that line's going to be better. I think this defense could be elite. The front seven, I heard yesterday, and I'll have an article tomorrow. The front seven, they think is going to be absolutely freakish, dominant. So, and people say, well, how can that be when you lose guys on the defensive line? Because the linebackers are that good and because they have other pieces up front that are still good, and they've got so much depth that come fourth quarter, I think that's when they're going to win their big ball games. If in those swing games, guys, if they're going to win those games, they're going to have an advantage, in my opinion, in the fourth quarter. So that's where we are. I think Bryce Underwood, it's very clear, fellas. And, if you disagree with me, tell me. But I think Bryce Underwood, it's clearly the starter, I think almost by default at this point, right? But he's been good. He's got that elite arm. And the more reps that he gets and the sooner he gets them, the better it's going to be for Michigan. So I think you roll with him.
Yeah, it's to start with Bryce. I would just say that it's become very clear that while Mikey Keene is still, in camp and working his way back, like he's not healthy enough to be a factor in that battle. I think if I had to project, what their depth chart looks like if they're starting today, Jaden Davis is probably their QB2 just by virtue of being here in the spring, getting those reps with Bryce Underwood, being the healthiest, most available guy. So I do think that it will be Bryce to start the year. I think that's extremely clear at this point. And I think we've talked about this before too, where I think that not that they thought last year you were just going to be able to run it back and culture would be the same, everything on the field would be the same, but I do think that they were caught off guard by just how much new and how different it was, despite running it back with a lot of the same pieces. And they seem to take that to heart. And what we've gotten, just everything we've heard, is that the off season in terms of, putting the work in the weight room and the culture, the mentality, I feel like they've positioned themselves really well to take a big step forward. It comes with a different set of question marks, the 6 road games, the seemingly, it seems like Sherrone will serve some sort of suspension. That's something to keep an eye on, especially depending on when it comes. But you just feel like he's a little more in command of the program as more of the CEO type. You've got your Chip Lindsey to delegate to. You've got Wink Martindale to delegate to. You've got one of the best GMs in college football in Sean McGee. It just feels like organizationally and operationally, they're at a much healthier spot this year. And for a guy like Sherrone, that, that's a little more weight off his shoulders too. And you just get to peep in and check in on all of the different aspects of your program. So feels like, they're in a good position to take a step forward. And at this point, other than, solving some of these position battles, he said earlier this week, this was going to, the way that they structured camp, this was always going to be a big week for that, culminating with the scrimmage they'll do this Saturday. So outside of getting some of those positions locked in, really the only questions you have left is how is it going to apply to the field, which we are now 16 days away from finding that out.
Yeah. And he even said that about this year having the ability to hand the offense to Chip Lindsey and, and trust that. And then that gives him, the ability to kind of focus his time on where it needs to be focused. Whereas maybe you just don't have enough time. Sometimes as a head coach, you probably still don't. But the quarterback competition, I mean, I think it's pretty clear to everybody it's going to be Bryce Underwood. I'm sure the players know that at this point. Sherrone Moore says he isn't going to name one publicly until his game week press conference, which is August 25th. He says, set your clocks. And, and the team will know before that, he said. I think the team knows right now, pretty much where this is headed. I think the hope is, from my standpoint, when you talk about Mikey Keene, I do think he probably doesn't have enough time to win this. Let's say he got fully healthy today. No limitations. He's in there today. You still may not have time to win the battle or even, earn some sort of role. But if it's a few weeks into the year, something like that, he becomes fully healthy, then you have better quarterback depth. If something does happen to Bryce Underwood, not Jack Tuttle healthy last year. He was not healthy. They just threw him in there. He had 1 practice before the Washington game, 2 before the Illinois game, and then he retired the next week, and you kind of feel bad for him. They were so desperate, they had to throw him in there. So I think the goal is to get him actually healthy at some point this year because, in all likelihood, Bryce Underwood's not, you play more games, the percentage chance goes up that anyone gets hurt, right? So in game 1, it's the best chance you're going to have a healthy starting quarterback. But beyond that, you may need somebody to step in. And I think having a guy that started 34 games in college football, that would be very, very valuable.
And I think it's a concern that Jaden Davis is your backup, and I won't hesitate to say that. We saw him in the spring. We know that what his limitations are, and that's not being mean to anybody. I think that's just a reality, right? Of big time athletics, that you call them like you see them. It's just, then I think you're almost in a situation like you were last year. And that is a major concern. There is a reason that they brought Jake Garcia in, right? So, but we hope that Mikey Keene comes back healthy. He is when he was out there early and going full go at times, he was looking, pretty decent from what we heard, but they're going to be careful with him. And you're absolutely right, Clay. There are no guarantees when it comes to an injury like that he's going to come back healthy 100%. And just bad luck that, again, at that quarterback spot, just bad luck that, man, how does that happen? And I think Jack Tuttle would have been the guy last year. And I think they were kind of banking on that before he got hurt. So, but you got Bryce Underwood. It's hard to complain when you've got a guy like that. And it's still more unlikely than not that he will get hurt. So, I mean, he's a big guy. I think you'd be a little bit more careful with him, with what you allow him to do in the run game. For example, if you don't have a backup, as Sherrone Moore stated to me when I asked him, hey, are you going to turn him loose with his feet? When I asked him at media day. So we'll find out, but I love what I've heard about Bryce Underwood, the player and the person and the leader, how much time he's putting into it. This is going to be a fun 3 years with him under center.
3 years, calling your shot. I think it'll be 3 years too, by the way. That's there are multiple players who have said, like, when they get recruited, Michigan typically says, like, hey, we want to get you out of here in 3 years, because that means, you're obviously a great player. So that would be, when you bring in a number one overall recruit, that's the expectation. I guess my last thought on the quarterbacks is, for a guy like Mikey Keene, I think at this point, like, it's similar to, a guy like Davis Warren. You're just ready. You're waiting to acclimate these guys when they're fully ready to play. Rod Moore on the other side of the ball, he's going to start there eventually, but they're not going to play him until, they feel like they have 100% of that guy available to practice and get ready and things like that. So I do think that, within the first month of the season, Mikey Keene probably is the backup quarterback, but to bring it full circle, I don't think there's enough time, and I don't think there's been enough time for it to be anyone else than Bryce.
Rod Moore going through walkthroughs, still doing some things on the side, as Anthony kind of alluded to there. Sherrone Moore says sooner than later is when he will return, and there's a lot riding on that. He's such a good player when he's fully healthy. We'll see at what level he can play at right away. Even in 2023, he had less severe injuries, and still took him some time to kind of get his feet under him a little bit. Now he's missed more time and had multiple knee surgery, so it could be a process. But if you could get him I'm talking at the very least. I'm expecting more, but and I would never count Rod Moore out for anything. But at the very least, as you see the photo there on YouTube, if you can have him fully healthy and at his full capabilities for the Ohio State game, I would take that with some good play, before that, as he kind of ramps up. So that's kind of the latest on Rod Moore. Some standouts in fall camp that Sherrone Moore mentioned. He says some of these players haven't necessarily surprised, but they've stood out. Sophomore linebacker Cole Sullivan, freshman linebacker Chase Taylor, senior safety Jaden Mangum, who missed almost all of last season with an injury, has really been taking steps forward. Sophomore corner Josiah Edmond, who has had 2 pick sixes in fall camp. Freshman corner Shamari Earls is flashing. Running backs Micah Kapana, Bryson Cusdall have been standing out as kind of depth running back pieces. It says the wide receivers are an electric group. Same goes for the tight ends. He did praise Cole Sullivan as much as anyone, and Cole Sullivan is going to be a backup linebacker this year. That group is very deep and very loaded, and that you also have Jimmy Rolder, who they consider at starter level, who is also a backup linebacker. You have both your starters from last season coming back, Ernest Hausman and Jayshon Barham. That group could be really, really good. That group could help the defensive line get their feet under them as they acclimate after so much that they lost last season. I know it's something that keeps coming up over and over, but this front seven could be pretty damn good, and the linebackers are a huge piece in that.
Yeah, and the corner position is the one, right? That
Yeah.
Wink has been saying from day one. We went to the portal. We thought maybe we'd need some help there, but you got some guys growing up like Jair Hill. So we don't have that lockdown corner. I think Jair Hill is the closest thing you have to that, at least right now, right? So if he can really develop into a dependable number one, you saw what they did with him last year, and they did just fine. As Wink said, we had to do some different things and give some different looks and stuff like that, but he did just fine with Zeke Berry on the other side. So that's going to be critical.
And
But I
that was
love,
kind of a mere haul most of that time when Zeke was
yes,
outside.
that's a great point. That's a great point too. Yep. So, and how he came on, but I have no question. I like what Lamar Morgan's done back there. I think he's pretty good as a secondary coach, and I think that he's going to get the most out of his group. But they need Jair Hill to be dependable in every way for this thing to be really, really elite, in my opinion. So, or one of these freshmen or these young guys to really step up. But they've got so many pieces, guys, and there's an argument on the message board. The safety group is deeper than we've ever seen, and I'm like, well, you got a lot of unproven, so we don't know that yet. I'm saying it could be, but to anoint them now, especially with Rod Moore not being completely healthy, is premature. But I think they've certainly got the potential to be really good, especially if Mangum's playing as well as he has been, and that's exciting news. So, guys, I will say this until the day I die: I love good defense, smothering defense more than anything. I love when you can close out a game by running the ball down somebody's throat like they did against Ohio State with that offensive line. But when you see absolute domination up front on defense where a team just can't do anything, it just, what did Jim Harbaugh say? It warms the cockles of your heart. That warms the cockles of my heart. So I think we're going to see that from this defense a lot this year. And that's why I think they got a good chance, or at least a solid chance, to win some of those early road games.
I flagged that twice this week where Jaden Mangum came up. I wasn't at the first press conference because I was off, but he came up twice this week as a guy that has flashed and really surprised them. And, I wonder how a guy like him factors into the safety rotation, especially if Rod Moore let's just say he is on the shelf for first week or first couple of weeks. This is a guy who played at an all Big Ten honorable mention level. Granted, on a bad Michigan State team, on a bad Michigan State defense, but at his best, and we watch probably a little more Michigan State than some of the other teams in the Big Ten just because of the tie to the state. But the guy can be like a heat-seeking missile and a ball hawk for them, and that's if there's something that maybe was missing at the safety position last year, it was that guys that could create turnovers. So I'm interested to see how he factors in. There continues to be a fair amount of hype for TJ Metcalf, whether it's playing safety, whether it's playing nickel. I ran back some of the position battle predictions this week, and I don't think they know who their starting nickel is going to be or what that looks like or who winds up being that guy. It could still be Rod Moore. Lamar Morgan had said that, at a spot like that, you prefer to have an older guy who knows the defense and know where he's supposed to be. So that to me, outside of, we talk about offensive line a lot. The starting nickel battle, who emerges from that, is fascinating to me. And it could change based on opponent, whether you have a bigger guy that you're guarding in the slot. Maybe you have one of your bigger safeties, or if you have a smaller, shiftier guy. I don't know, but I just know that when you look at the work that a guy like Lamar Morgan has done, they have as much optionality on that back end as I think any Michigan defense has had of late. And that's pretty exciting because the NFL is doing a lot of that now too, where you're mixing and matching combinations in the secondary. So I think they have a style that matches where the game is going, at least at that level.
I thought that was interesting. He kind of went in depth about that, how he wants all his guys to learn different positions so that when they get to the NFL and they get moved, they're not caught off guard. Like Dax Hill, who has played nickel, safety, and then now he's an outside corner for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's played multiple spots in the NFL, and he was able to move around a little bit at Michigan, more of a safety, under Don Brown's system. Then the next year he was a very, very good nickelback. So they're doing that. At the same time, I think this 4-day stretch they're currently in, as we talked about earlier, is probably when you start to whittle down some of the positions guys are playing, and hone in on a few guys for a different position, things like that. But going back to Jaden Mangum, Lamar Morgan said on Monday that he's going to play first game, first quarter. Like, he is that much going to be in the rotation. Part of that's the Rod Moore injury. Part of that is the fact that one of your safeties like TJ Metcalf or Mason Curtis may be, down at nickel, but that makes it an even more valuable pickup. And sometimes when we talk about transfer pickups, we think of just, right away. All right, what does this guy bring? What's the rotation look like? Well, for Jaden Mangum, it was a year later because he suffered an injury, and was still an important pickup. This guy's had an interception against Nebraska, interception against Minnesota, interception at Rutgers, and an interception against the Washington team that made the national championship game and lost to Michigan. So he's been in some big spots, as you said, on a really bad Michigan State team, but he's played a role. He's seen good offenses. He's made plays in those games. So I'm excited to see him too, what he's going to bring to this defense. But let's move to the offensive line, where it's a huge question mark as to how they're going to perform. It's a huge question mark as to how they're going to perform early in the season, because they have to come out and help set the tone if you're going to win at Oklahoma. Whether you put up 17 points or you put up 34 points, the O-line is going to have to do some really good things to win that game. And to your point, Chris, running out the clock at the end, a lot of that's on the offensive line, and there is nothing more satisfying. I'll say, going back to the Ohio State game last year, it was the offensive line and really the running backs, Kalel Mullings and then Zavada. But they also got to stop at the end. Like, just those two things, elite defense and an O-line that can take over a game late, those are fun to watch. Sherrone Moore was very complimentary of that group. He says the goal is to be elite. The goal is to win the Joe Moore Award. Of course, that's going to be the goal every year. But the quote that stood out to me was that he thinks this group is in a good place to challenge to be one of the best units in the country. You don't need to be one of the best units in the country. He also is the same coach that said last year that as long as he's here, they're going to be good up front, was the quote. It didn't really happen last season. But the fact that he's saying that another year later after they weren't tells me that at least they're pretty optimistic about the group. It's all got to come together on the field, but I'd rather hear that than not, I guess. Although in 16 days, we get to judge for ourselves, and it's, talking season's over.
Yeah, all the talk last year about the offensive line really improving. Northwestern game, yeah, right. I thought that they did some good things. Ohio State and Alabama, if you go back and look at that, there was a lot of yardage after contact in the backfield from Jordan Marshall in the Alabama game. Kalel Mullings' biggest run against Ohio State, the line was completely collapsed and there was a hold on the edge, maybe, regardless exactly, but. That was all Kalel Mullings. So you can't just look at the numbers and say these guys improved, right? Especially when you aren't dropping the pass. They were rarely passing. I think the biggest passing play in the Ohio State game, wasn't it the Peyton O'Leary catch? And that was when Davis Warren was flushed from the pocket. I can't think of a bigger one than that downfield. No. So let's not pretend that these guys were tearing it up at the end of the year. Okay. But do I think that there are individual players that can be better? I think Evan Link will be better after a year. I still think it's a risk, fellas, moving your weakest link, pun intended, at right tackle over to the left and expecting him to be better. Now, we'll see. Maybe that's going to be the case. If not, then maybe Andrew Babalola gets a shot. But you'd rather have it in there where you've got guys that are working together most of the year. I think we're going to see a lot of combinations in that first game if it goes as we all expect that it will, just to see who plays best together. I think they're getting an idea of that in camp, but you really can't tell until the lights are on who can play and how well. So that'll be interesting. I'll be watching Greg Crippen. I really was hoping that they would say there's no question Greg Crippen's our guy. They said, well, he's still getting pushed there, and maybe that was a little bit of coaching going on, but really need him to be good because, guys, these lines, when you had Olu Atimi and Drake Nugent, the difference between those lines being good and great was the center position, and those guys really played well up front. So going to be interesting. I think Andrew Sprague's going to be an all-Big Ten guy here. Right guard is very interesting. I think it's going to be Nathan Afobe to start, but there are other guys pushing him. Could you theoretically move Link to guard if Andrew Babalola were to win the left tackle spot eventually? Absolutely. So I think there's still going to be some tinkering going on there, but I do think there are bodies, guys, starting next year. I think that line is going to be in contention to be among the best lines in the Big Ten for sure. And then a couple years from now, I think they've got enough talent there that they should be among the best in the country.
Yeah, I wrote about this earlier. The offensive line, I'm buying that they will be improved just because I think from a physicality standpoint, they're in a much better spot this year than they were this time last year. But, you go left to right, right to left, however you want to go and look at this thing. there are still questions at every single spot. You know, is Evan Link actually improved? Is that real? And is he ready to play left tackle? If it's not him, is Andrew Babalola going to be ready as a true freshman? You know, Giovanni El Hadi, you know, a lot's been made about his move from the right side back to the left. Is that actually going to benefit him? Greg Crippen, can you be anything close to what Andrew Vistardis, Olu Oluwatimi, Drake Nugent were for that line? Given that they're still saying, you know, this is his 5th year and we're still having the conversation about him needing to be pushed, I'm a little skeptical about that. Right guard, we don't know who that guy is going to be at all. And Sprague, as much as good of a bowl game as it was for him, he is still just a sophomore. And, you know, we are, and I'm trying not to make this sound like a shot at the coaching staff, but everything was all hunky-dory going into last season too. And even when our eyeballs were telling us and the game grades were showing us that like a guy like Evan Link on the right side just wasn't accomplishing anything, they'd say, oh, we're seeing improvement. He had a great game. Like we're looking at things that maybe people don't see. I'm still skeptical about all of that. Now, I think that there are younger, more athletic pieces on the way. Babalola, I think, is going to be a fixture here. Sprague, I think, is going to be a fixture. In time, guys like Ty Haywood, Avery Gash, those guys, I think, will be long-term pieces. But in the here and now, I still have pretty big questions about that.
Yeah. And there's two sides to everything that's said during camp too, because I also, that got me excited about the future of Jake Guarnera potentially at center, you know, but I'm more focused on the here and now. And yeah, that you have that. I mean, I guess I'm buying that Giovanni El Hadi is going to be at least good this season. I think he's bigger. He has more experience now. You know, as much as we talked about him starting some games a couple years ago, and this is all hindsight bias because I was using all these talking points. You know, now he finally has a full season under his belt. He knows what it takes. He's at a more comfortable position. And to your point, Anthony, about what they were saying going into last year, which was that the offensive line should be good, with the benefit of hindsight, you know, Giovanni El Hadi said a week or two ago that it was kind of chaotic all year last year in the offensive line room, that they were all settling into new roles and they had a new coach and all these things. So I do think that continuity, you know, some more comfortability, adding in more staff to help out, placing more focus on that position group, it has to add up at some point to some improvement. But then a guy goes down and you got to move things around, and it's going to be a process throughout the season. Let's see, other offensive line notes. Yeah, Guarnera, Norton, and Lawrence Hattar are the three guys battling at right guard with Nate Afobe. Less mention or no mention of Ty Haywood, but Blake Frazier, kind of your swing tackle right now, playing some left, playing some right, and battling with Andrew Sprague, his classmate, at right tackle. So he's another guy, I think, for the future of this line. He's just a redshirt freshman after kind of missing last season with injury as well. Defense didn't get, you know, I know we mentioned Cole Sullivan, linebackers. I don't think a single member of the defensive line came up when we talked to Sherrone Moore. I mean, that says something in its own right, that they're very confident there. The interesting thing about the Oklahoma game is that both teams' offensive lines are huge question marks, and both teams' defensive lines look to be the strength of the team, or the front sevens in general. What does that mean? I'm thinking a 17-14 type of game, something like that. But it's interesting that these two teams are very similar in the way they're trying to rebuild. Better at quarterback, new offensive coordinators, good defenses. It'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah, 23-20, something like that. It's going to be 23-17. Yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be a lower scoring game. But, guys, I can't wait for that trip. We got all our accommodations set. We've got everything going on. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a fun year. We always do. Anthony used to make fun of me for saying, gosh darn it, this is fun. Every time I'd go somewhere, but gosh darn it, it's
from
fun.
A place of love, not from a place of mocking.
I know, but damn it, it's fun. It is so fun to be able to cover these things. Think of what
they also won every game that year.
Think of what we have been able to do, fellas, in this profession that we would not have been able to do, and the things that you guys still have to look forward to. I'm excited for you. It's been a dream. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up.
I got nothing left. I saw the Rose Bowl and the Natty, so it's all downhill. It feels like work now, honestly. No,
well,
it's gonna
until they go 15-0 next year again. Yeah,
Yeah,
happened.
I think the days of that
17.
are over for just about everyone.
I think so too. But you never know.
But yeah,
Just
this.
the ones that matter.
So can we put you down for, is it 23-17 or 23-20 for staff picks? We're going to
Yes,
lock
it
in right
is.
now.
Yes, it is. But you're
We'll,
not going
we'll let's tease it. We'll tell them in a couple of weeks. All right.
exactly,
We'll tell them
and that's subject to change. We'll see what happens.
of course.
So yeah, and I didn't say which team, so we'll go from
That's
there.
true.
Stay tuned.
Yep.
Stay tuned.
Yep,
Well, I think that's going to be our show.
is it.
What's that?
I said that is it. We're going to celebrate this weekend. If this thing ends with some salsa and every good thing that comes with it, or two, and go from there.
I love it. I love it. We'll be back on Monday with our live show at 6:00. But like the video in the meantime, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got press conferences, everything else over there all season long. So make sure to subscribe. Also, head to thewolverine.com. We have you covered on all things Michigan football, basketball, recruiting, NIL, transfer portal. You can use the promo code UM1 right now for 2 months of premium access for just $1. That's UM and the numeral 1. And we will see everyone next time.